Hello everyone. Today I wanted to talk to you about greyboxing. What is greyboxing? Greyboxing is a form of level design where you create the level but you don't go into all the polish and the environment design and all of the aspects related to making a fully complete level. What you're doing is you're making the level to a point where it's playable, and then you can come back later and polish it. So I figured the best way to explain this was if I was to do some greyboxing myself and just sort of walk you through what I'm doing as I do it. So I'll be speeding through a bunch of parts, but I'll be stopping and slowing down whenever I have something important to say. Oh, also the reason there's this sheet behind me is because I was trying to do some green screening, and I think I need to buy an actual green screen for that to work. And if you love RPG Maker tips, tricks, tutorials, and just general discussion about RPG Maker, then scroll down and hit subscribe and the bell icon so you get notified whenever I upload a new video. For the sake of concepting, I am using my Wacom Intuos. It just makes it easier. You can do it with a mouse. So one of the things that I like to do is get a grid up on the screen, and how I do that is I go over to Edit, I then go to Preferences, and then I go to Grids, Guides, and Slices. Right here under Grids, Guides, and Slices, you'll see Grid, so I've got it colored black, and there's a grid every 48 pixels. Now what I also have is two subdivisions. What does that mean? That means this grid essentially cuts in half either way. So this big black line is 48 by 48, and then it's consisted of smaller little grid lines just so I have like a rough outline of the square that I'm working within. If you ever want to turn those off, you can go over into View, turn Extras off. Or you can turn Extras on and go View, Show, Grid. And we can just do that again, View, Show, Grid. Firstly, you never want to work on the first layer, you always want to create a second layer, and I always just call this the concept layer. I might do this in a bright color like blue or green. Now, prior to actually doing the drawing of this level, I have actually done a bit of writing and what I would like this level to look like. Again, this first part of the level design, it's very rough. It doesn't need to be detailed at all. You're just trying to get the basic tile structure down, like how many tiles, 1, 2, 3, and then the basic shape of the level. Once I've got the basic size of the level down, I'm just going to crop it just so I've got a smaller area to work with. And after I do that small amount of cropping, then what I'm going to do is just try and make the grids line up. So this little bridge here is supposed to be more towards the center. There, that's looking better. Now that I've got this basic sort of concept done, what I want to do is detail it out a teeny bit more. So firstly, I'm going to create a grey layer for the background layer, and I'm going to make this layer pretty light. From here, we're going to do a bit more concepting. So I'll create a new layer, and I'm going to call that Concept 2. And that's where I'm just going to go into a bit more detail. This time I'm just going to use black instead of a bright color. Sometimes you might find as you're going over the detail layer, some of your other assets that you've wanted to create have just shifted away from the center of the tiles. You just want to move them back. And once you're happy with your second concept, that's when you can go ahead and turn off the green layer or the initial concept layer and see what your black outline has. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a bunch of different color masks. So we have our background, which is all of this white empty space over here, and then we have our foreground, which are the objects that make up our level. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mask the foreground because we already have a grey colour for the background. Now the foreground, I'm going to make that a slightly darker colour than the background, just so it stands out a bit more. So what I'll do is I'll Alt and select the background colour. I will then shift this down a bit, shift in the colour grade, I'll shift it a bit darker. Then what I'm going to do is right above layer 1, which we'll just call background mask, I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm just going to call this foreground mask. And then I'm going to go over the foreground with this darker colour and fill that one in. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to create a new layer, and I'm just going to call this cliff. Now this is going to be purely the shading color of these cliffs. What I'm going to do is right click this layer, go create clipping mask, and then over here I'm going to select a darker gray. Now you'll notice that I can draw on this cliff, but the second I go off this gray, it stops drawing. That's because this layer is clipped to this layer underneath. So I can keep going off this dark grey and it won't do anything outside our clipping mask. So now what I'm going to do is instead of cliff, I'm just going to rename this one to darkness and objects. And I'm going to apply this level of grey to any of the dark areas within the map, as well as any of the objects within the map. Okay, now we've got our darkness and objects done. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create two more clipping masks. One of them is going to be the shadows, and one of them is going to be the highlights. Now you can have all of these on the same layer, I just prefer to keep them separate so I can change things later on down the line. And next we're going to create a layer for the highlights. Again, we're going to create a new layer, we'll title it highlights. And I'm just going to make that a clipping mask once more. And see, here we've just concepted a grey box. This is a grayscale level. If I import one of my characters, I'll just give her layer a name, character reference. Now, as you can see, this is what my character looks like in relation to the level. So I can move her around just to make sure things would work. And now from here, what we can do is we can import this level directly into the game and parallax it, and we've essentially finished the level. This will now work in-game, and this is what's known as a grey box. We shouldn't need to touch this level again until polish, until the end of development. Once we've finished the game, once we've finished all the coding, the music, all of that sort of stuff, we don't need to go back to this level until then. Everything we could possibly need out of the level for the in-game editor is right here. All these tiles, they line up. We can place events here, we can place cutscenes, we can place interactable objects over the top of this level. Everything we need in a game development sense is encapsulated right here, just in this grey box level. Now let's get into why do we grey box levels? The reason in games design that we grey box levels, make quick grayscale levels, is simply due to the time it takes to make them. As I was saying before, you can do everything you need game development wise in the grayscale level, so it makes no sense for the game development team to be waiting for the level designers and the level artists to completely polish a level before they start getting into the engine and getting all of the events done, getting all the cutscenes done. You don't need a completely polished level to get that all done. That's why we make grey box levels, because we can get through them incredibly quickly. That last one took me roughly just under an hour. Just under an hour to make a single grey box level. Now if I was to fully polish that level with lighting, with textures, with everything, that would probably take 6 to 7 hours just to get everything right. Sometimes it might even take a second day depending on the complexity. The ability to create an entire level in 1 hour compared to its finish time sometimes taking 2 days. It speeds up the development process so that the level designers can work on all of the levels, get them grey boxed, so then the game designers can jump into the engine, make sure all the events and cutscenes are working, and then while the game developers are actually developing the game in those grey box levels, that's when the level designer can go back to the grey box levels and start texturing them, start adding detail, lighting, animations. Grey boxing your levels is just an awesome way to streamline the game development process. It's quick, it's simple, and you can come back to it later after you've finished the game. Adding all of those details, that's all something that can be done in Polish, and nothing that needs to be done during the game development process. So really, if I want you to take anything from this video, it's this. Grey box your levels, finish your game, polish it later. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. We don't need to go back to this level